You know that Keeley Companies is all about fostering the world-class culture through their incredible cultural pillars. Well, it was time to add a seventh cultural pillar, Keeley Green. Guided by the mission to raise the sustainability standards by which they design, build, operate, and live, Keeley Green is dedicated to using a holistic approach to leave a positive impact on our environment, create a future that is sustainable for generations to come. In the words of Rusty Keeley, we are just getting started. You can learn more about that just getting started mentality and all the work they do by visiting my friends at Keeley Companies online at KeeleyCompanies.com.
Welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. John is the two-time national best-selling author of On Fire and In Awe. He's a world-class inspirational speaker, the host of the Live Inspired podcast, and he's the real-life inspiration behind the major motion picture Soul on Fire. Each week, John interviews extraordinary individuals about their life stories so you can more fully live your life story. Here's your host, John O'Leary.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. Our guest today's name is Kevin Clark. Kevin is an entrepreneur. He's an Emmy award-winning producer. He's also the co-founder of Blessn. Blessn is a faith-based social media platform designed to bring more positivity, more encouragement, and more connection into the digital world. The right kind of inspiration, the right kind of connection. After building a successful career in entertainment, Kevin discovered his greatest purpose was creating businesses and communities that elevate and serve others. Today, Kevin joins us to share how a chance meeting backstage at the Academy Awards led to a lifelong friendship and business partnership, why he shifted his focus from chasing success to creating impact, and what inspired him to launch a social media platform centered, no, not on money or ego or fame, but on hope, on encouragement, on unity, on love. We discuss doom scrolling, we talk about the influence of our digital habits, and we talk about the role intentional community plays in helping you and I thrive. So family and friends, if you are feeling a little overwhelmed by negativity, or if you're craving a more meaningful connection, today's conversation with Kevin Clark is for you. You will leave with practical ways to be more intentional with your attention. And it's a powerful reminder that goodness is still everywhere around us and within us. So buckle up, get ready for a ride as I bring on my friend, now yours, his name, Kevin Clark. Kevin, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
Good to be here. Thank you, John.
Well, man, I always kind of wish I hit record before I did, because sometimes the best of the conversation is captured before I actually do my job, which is when we're just shooting the bull and having fun. And I feel already like I'm dancing with a friend. So I'm looking forward to now opening this song and this dance to our followers, our listeners, our viewers around the world, man. So for those who are meeting you for the very first time, if you had to introduce yourself to them, Kevin Clark, what do you do? So how do you respond to that? Kevin, what do you do?
An elevator pitch, I guess. I live out here in California, and I met my best friend, who's my business partner, backstage at the Academy Awards many years ago. We were there working. We were not being celebrated, unfortunately. So we've been attached to the hip ever since, opening businesses. We've opened a lot of homes for developmentally disabled folks here in Southern California, which translates to mainly autistic young adults. And because we both had a love of pop culture, we always wanted to get more involved in, well, pop culture. So we have started an app, and it's a social media app, and it is kind of a faith-based, family-friendly community. And that's where we're at right now.
So I'm going to be asking you a whole bunch of questions around this app. And I've heard you introduced as a world-class director, Academy Award winner, Emmy recipient, a host of the Grammys. So you've done a lot of remarkable things. We'll talk about a few of them during this episode. Back it up a little bit, though. But before you met Gerald backstage, I think one of your mothers introduced you guys. So before that happened, take me back to your childhood. Like, what were you up to as a kid? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up not far from you. You're in St. Louis. I grew up in Oklahoma City. I grew up as a theater kid and had a lot of fun doing that. And my father had me pretty late in life. If he were still alive, he would be 105 as
Mm.
of last week. But he passed away a couple decades ago. But I think it was interesting. I was raised by essentially a, a guy with kind of a grandfatherly approach to raising me. And I really had a great childhood. And then decided I would completely mess that up by moving to California for college. And and
That'll
I've been
do it,
here
man. What college?
USC Trojan.
When you were a theater kid back in high school, I was not one. As you and I were talking offline, though, about theaters and movies and film and that world. I, I think why I love our producers, our actors in the film, all the folks who worked on it is they were all theater kids. So
Oh
even if
yeah,
your name is William H. Macy and you made it big, or John Corbett and you made it big, or whatever the job your name is and your brand is now, at their heart, they're just theater kids.
yeah.
You know, kind of goofy high school kids. So what kind of stuff were you into as a goofy high school theater kid?
Well, it's funny. I think actually by the time high school rolled around, I was done with theater. I think I became kind of the quintessential awkward teenage boy, and I wanted less attention on myself. But as a youngster, we actually had some good theater in Oklahoma City. A place called Carpenter Square Theater, a place called Lyric Theater. These are like really reputable theaters that have great talent. So I spent a lot of time there. And they had this competition, I think it still exists, called Oklahoma Kids.
Hmm.
And I entered that and had this one glorious year at 12 where I swept all the categories I was in. And that was a blast. I had a lot of fun doing that. And then became a very awkward teenage boy and slowly backed out of all of it.
Well, you backed back into it though in time. You go out to USC. What were you going to major in? What was your focus?
Yeah, I went to their film school. So it was a great, obviously, film school. And a lot of the people I went there with are now names. People have had real careers, big careers. And I really I love film school. I think as a kind of a shy kid from Oklahoma City, I think I was a little unprepared for how rough and tumble Hollywood is. So I encountered some wild characters early on, and I enjoyed it. But I think prior to a lot of the things that have happened lately, where there's been more accountability for behaviors in Hollywood, prior to that, people did and said wild things. And my chin was like often on the floor, what I heard producers say to each other, to their underlings, whatever. And I actually then got the heck out of it for a while and then continued to work backstage at the Academy Awards, which is where you mentioned my mother introduced me to my best friend and now business partner, Gerald.
Why don't we start there then? So
Yeah.
before we even, because you listen to your mom, which not everybody does when they're a kid, not everybody does when they're backstage. Your
Yeah.
mom must be a remarkable person. Tell us about your mom first.
Yeah, she's great. I actually hired her at the Academy Awards. So I was early 20s. I got elevated to a supervisor position at the Academy Awards. And we had some openings on our staff, and my mother was in LA. So I said, hey, to my boss, I was like, my mother is stage manager at theaters, like she's in town. Let's hire her this year. And 20 years later, she's still there. She kept working year after year because she did so good. And I really had a good time because she comes into town and then we go do this thing and then we go to her favorite spots in LA. She loves beaches like Redondo Beach. So she's a lot of fun. And my best friend was working at some capacity at the Academy Awards and I didn't meet him. And I guess she just stopped in front of him and struck up a conversation and said, hey, what do you do? And Gerald was like, it's not very glamorous. I stand here with clipboard. And she's like, oh, you seem great. Why don't you come meet my son? I don't know why she did it, but she introduced us. And now, all these years later, he's like the guy I talk to every single day of my life. And I do all my businesses with him.
What was your first business that you did with Gerald?
Gosh, I want to say we tried something ridiculous. I think it was when we decided to sell used college books. We would go to the campuses and see what books they were throwing out and take them. And we thought we were going to get rich. We thought, oh, college books sell for $50 a pop. And we have hundreds. We sold 2 books, and the rest are still in a pile in his garage all these years later. It did not work very well.
So, for the most part, when most of us fail in something, I started a high school band. We were laughed out of the auditorium, and that was that.
Yeah.
Most of us, when we fail, we give up on the dream. Why did you and Gerald keep moving forward and come up with the next business and the next and the next and the next?
I don't think it was for a logical reason. I don't think that he and I have, let's say, like an entrepreneurial gene in us. I think it's more that we're lacking an off button. Even if we're like, oh, that didn't work, we failed, we got laughed at, or whatever, when we have been laughed at. Within weeks, one of us is excitedly sharing an idea they've had, and it's
Hmm.
infectious. And the other person's like, oh, I love it, let's do it. And we just try again. There's not really a rhyme or reason, you know?
What was the first business? Sounds like college textbooks was not it. What was the first business that actually worked?
Well, we had a business that worked in terms of it got us someplace, but it didn't make us money. And then we had a business that finally got someplace and made us money. So the first thing we did is he called me and he says, hey, Kev, why don't we buy up airtime on a national cable broadcast and then produce a reality show and then sell the ads for that reality show to make a profit? And I thought, this is insane, but let's do it. So we did it. We produced a little TV show. It was very short lived, a reality show. And we sold the ads through a marketing agency in New York, and it financed the production. And then we bought the airtime, all that stuff. And I don't think we even broke even. I'm pretty sure we took a massive loss on that. And it was coincidentally the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life because we're always in pre production, which is planning the next episode. We were always in production every single week. And then we were always in post production, which is editing whatever we've already done. And so there was no rest for the weary. We're just going, going, going. And after months and months of this, I said, all right, man, how much money did we make? And he's like, we made negative $3,000. I thought, oh man, I don't ever want to do that again. But we got some accolades for our efforts. We won an Emmy Award, which is really neat. And then he came to me and he says, hey, you want to do that again? And I said, are you out of your mind? I don't want to do that again. Take a massive loss or at least a little loss for all that effort. And then he just out of nowhere says, well, let's do something else. Let's open homes for developmentally disabled adults, autistic folks. And I couldn't even understand where he got the idea. So I said, you know what? It's not television. Let's do it. And we actually got that up and going. That's where we're at now. We own homes around Orange County, California. But we almost didn't make that happen because the licensing process is very long.
Yes.
And property, I'm sure you can guess, in Orange County, California is very expensive. So we're sitting on this property for 2 years and we haven't gotten anywhere. And right before the pandemic shut down California completely, including all branches of the government, we got 2 guys to move into our first home. And then everything shut down for like 6, 8 months, something like that. So, through the grace of God, with one day as a margin of error, our business took off and became what it is now. Had we gotten those 2 guys 1 or 2 days later, we'd have shut down because we couldn't keep up with the bills for an empty location. So, by the skin of our teeth, we made it. And now we've got several of these.
Either on the front side of this or now that you're actually succeeding in this line of work, was it about profit and a place in the market where you saw an opportunity? Or was it about mission and the ability to do work that mattered and in doing work that mattered, making a profit?
I like that question a lot because one of the things that I noticed when we were doing our television stuff is that it was kind of meaningless. It was a fun time, it was
Right.
challenging, and I think that's all important, but at the end of the day, we'd done something that we didn't really care about. It wasn't actually that exciting. It wasn't, cool. It wasn't that fun. We met people that were really neat and interesting people, but we didn't really feel like we'd had any impact. So I think when he proposed this idea, I loved it not just because, oh, I think that we can turn this into something real. but also there was like a lot more meaning behind it than producing a schlocky, silly reality TV show. So I really liked the idea. And even as he tried to pivot us back towards television, I put my foot down and said, no, we're going to do this.
Mm.
And I am so grateful we went that direction. And I sincerely don't miss producing a small reality TV show at all.
Yeah, it's a grind that people can't imagine unless you've endured the misery and the monotony of it. So,
Yeah.
how many adults now are you serving through your work at any moment?
I think we're up to 20 person served, as they call it,
Okay.
spread out over 5 locations at the moment.
Is there a favorite story of impact or a favorite resident, adult friend that you've been able to get to know as you've built this out?
Oh gosh, they are all of them, like they have a lot of personality. So when people ask me about this, I think they're picturing people that are like incapable of communicating or incapable of, shooting the bull, as you say. And I found it to be the opposite. Like
Right.
every single one of these guys, when you're around them, it feels like you're around a kid brother. They've got their quirks, as all children do, and they're typically very interested in something. One guy keeps getting jobs at Disneyland and other theme parks. Another guy set up a Bitcoin mining operation in our garage and ran the bill up to like $3,000 a month in electricity. And I couldn't catch on. I was like, what is happening over there? And I go over and I'm like, is somebody cranking the AC to like 40 degrees? Like, why is the AC like, what's happening? And somebody walked me to the garage to a literal Bitcoin mining operation set up by one of the young autistic guys. And I, of course, shut it down. And so he'd made $50 in profit from my $3,000 electricity bill. So I said, "Hey, buddy, how about this? I'm going to give you 50 bucks. You won. Let's stop this now."
You so shifted away from that work back to television for a moment, and then I want to
Yeah.
step into the most recent work that you guys have done together. You did a PSA, I think it was an Emmy Award-winning PSA on school violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
What led to it, and then what did you learn through the creation of that work?
Yeah. That my business partner Gerald, his children were in high school. I think there'd been a spate of school shootings, so he was just thinking about it a lot. At the time, my daughter was, I'm going to say 4, so it wasn't something that was necessarily on my mind yet. But he brought it up. He's like, "I'd like to do this. Obviously, we won't make money doing it." So we did it just because it was something on his mind. And then we got nominated for an Emmy Award, and then we won. And I
Mm.
couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it so much. I didn't go to the ceremony. I went skiing. And he called me and he's like just yelling and he's like, "We won." And I was kicking myself, of course. I wish I'd have gone. But I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, this project is not something I would have thought would bring us, anything but the pleasure that we did it and, the
Right.
pride in it.
Talk about it though, man, because I haven't seen it. What was it about what you created that was Emmy worthy?
I think it was the timing. I really think we had a good production and it was essentially a story about if you're a high school kid and you see something, say something, which used to be actually, I think, a motto of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
And so we were saying basically, it's way better to be uncomfortable and possibly prevent something than to stay quiet and be shy and nervous to speak up. And so the whole thing was about that and what kind of incident speaking up could prevent.
Mm.
So it was kind of to the point, and for some reason, people really liked it.
Well, congratulations. You have one more Emmy than I do.
Yeah, I'll fly it out so you can put it back there.
Oh, it would look nice over here over my right shoulder, man. So please do consider that. Next time you're back in Oklahoma City, just drive a
Yeah,
little bit farther and we'll party with your Emmy trophy.
sounds like a plan.
Talk about this idea during, I think it was during COVID, when
Hmm.
you and your business partner began recognizing that you and your business partner and the world are spending their lives doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Talk about
Well,
those
I'll
days.
say this: I am still guilty of it. I this morning was caught myself doom scrolling on somebody else's platform, not my own, and I was like, that's it. I'm going to take the dog for a walk. But during COVID, I don't know. Do you remember, John, when you discovered like short form video content like TikTok or Reels or any of that?
You know what's funny? My kids got me on it like 4 years ago, and about an hour later, I canceled the app and I haven't looked
Did you?
back because I realized like it was so not only so addictive, it was sending me stuff that I knew was garbage. Not like kind of cats chasing flashlights, like that's clearly garbage. But this was showing me stuff that I didn't want to see.
Darker stuff.
And then I'm scrolling. And
Mhm.
then I know it's tracking me and it's going to send me more of that. I'm like, I'm not playing this game, man. So I actually got rid of TikTok and haven't brought it back online.
Excellent. That's good. I discovered it at the time, like literally, I want to say a week into COVID lockdown. And then, we're all separated, obviously, and locked inside. And so I thought it was like a really fun escape back then. And I want to say that a lot of the content was kind of fluff, which is people dancing, people
Yeah,
making really creative comedy bits. So it was good for a laugh and a distraction as the world was falling apart. But I think a lot of what has happened in the meantime is savvy people have caught up with TikTok and Reels. And as the old saying goes, if it bleeds, it leads. So obviously, newspapers put shocking headlines to sell newspapers back in the day. And I think everybody caught on to that with TikTok and Reels that if you want somebody to stick around, you got to be shocking or contrarian or just outrageous or
right.
sad, whatever. So it's all negativity. But it happened so slowly for me. I hadn't caught on that it had switched and that I was getting more and more negative, gloomy content. And then again, my business partner called me and he said he was tired of doom scrolling and all that stuff. And he wanted to make something to compete with it. And so he pitched me Blessn. And he thought if we gave people out there, especially Christians, a faith based, family friendly, positive app, that a lot of people would flock to it. So we spent years developing it. And when we launched, we were shocked that like thousands and thousands of people flocked to it immediately. And it's interesting because when I go on the app, it is positivity. And there's a little part of my brain that's waiting for the outrageous or the doom and gloom because we've been so programmed to want that from our phones, I guess.
Mhm.
So we're happy that Blessing is not that. It is very much not that.
I want to come back to Blessing in a minute and talk more about the formation of it and what you're finding and where you want to go next and how our listeners and viewers can learn more about it. I think it's worth learning about. I think it's worth subscribing to and bringing onto your platform, wherever you are, listening to my voice right now. But talk about some of the negative side effects of doom scrolling. Like, what's the big problem, guys, that I watch a little garbage when I get up in the morning and before I go to bed at night? Like, I'm busy. It lets my mind chill.
Yeah.
Why do you say, yeah, it actually might, but it does more than that, and you may not even be aware of it?
Yeah, it's pretty apparent, especially like in the scenarios you just listed, waking up or going to bed. I mean, if you're waking up and the first thing you do is doom scroll and see contentious negative content, that's going to stay with you all day. And they have discovered that the most dopamine is released through outrage, through anger. So a lot of the content we're taking in, it's geared at that so that we get our dopamine hit, we keep scrolling. That is, I think, one of the worst possible ways that we could start our day. And I think it's
Right.
also one of the worst possible ways we could end our day. We're always putting things into our minds all day long. And a lot of it's on accident. A lot of it we can't control. But we certainly can control this. So I'm as guilty of it as the next man. Really, we should all be trying to not, especially start our days through that. So exercise is a great alternative, but if you find yourself reaching for the phone, maybe find a healthier alternative, Blessing, or even, just get outside for a few.
So I think most of us, if we're at all honest, recognize that even if we are convicted politically in one way or another, we have room in this under this tent for both parties. Imagine that. But
Mhm.
some folks subscribe to focusing on one thing only. Even those of us who are convicted in that one area have to know that if you keep listening to the same negative message, it is having an effect on your thoughts, on
Yeah.
your behavior, on your words, on your relationships, and ultimately on your life. We're all pretty
Yeah.
aware of this, at least vaguely. You became pretty clear on it, but what gave you and your business partner this idea like, well, why don't we fight against it? Why don't we put forward the opposite in some regards of social media, call it Blessn and see what happens? What gave you
Yeah.
all the gall to think that's a lane you could
Yeah.
run?
I think my business partner, Gerald, it was his thought. I think for me, I'm very susceptible to his excitement when he gets hyped about something. He's like, Kevin, let's do this. And like I catch the energy and I'm like, yeah, let's do that.
Right.
So it is ridiculous, the idea of two guys who have no background in tech deciding to take on TikTok. That's a ridiculous idea. And if you were to phrase it like that, like, Kevin, let's take on TikTok, I'd have just hung up the phone because that is silly. You can't do that. But because he pitched it in like, let's be an alternative, and
Right.
people reacted to it so strongly, even as we developed it and we talked about it with friends and family, people would say, yes, that is a winner. I can't wait. So there's always been, every step along the way, somebody saying, this is fantastic and it's what I've been waiting for. And I think all those little tiny conversations really kind of kept us going because developing tech, man, that is a long, expensive process.
Yes.
And again, I'm glad I didn't know that. If I'd have known what kind of time commitment and money commitment it was, I'd have hung up on my business partner. But like, it's worth it. We got there, we launched, and there is this thing where you've worked so hard to develop it, and now it's out there in the world. You kid yourself that you reached the finish line, not by a long shot. We've
Mm,
spent every week since it launched improving it, tweaking it, getting feedback from people, adding new features. So it is kind of an ongoing thing. I don't know if there is a finish line. I think we'll maybe work on this every day of our lives indefinitely.
mm. You're competing against Goliath.
Yeah.
And not only is it Goliath, there's 30 of them, and they're
Yes.
backed by billionaire Goliaths. And more than that, and this is the thing you're really running up against, I think, is the human bend toward negativity. The idea of if it bleeds, it leads is not driven by social media. It's driven by our attraction to train wrecks. We enjoy
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
We
So,
like when they capture the couple cheating at a Coldplay concert. We mock that and we share it. And we
mhm.
like when this thing happens over there in New York or Southern California, the fires, we watch it. We look for the next mansion to burn. It
Yeah.
triggers dopamine in all of us.
Yeah. A little.
And
Yeah.
now you're coming at this thing saying, people, there will be hardship always. And yet, what you focus on grows. Come over here. So
Yeah.
you're fighting not only the Goliaths and the Goliaths backed by Goliaths, but you're fighting the human heart here and the tendencies toward doom. So
Yeah.
talk about that struggle.
Yeah. That is something that I actually secretly worried about. This is the first time I've ever even addressed this on an interview. And I did worry that the tendency that you're talking about, that is in all of us, would cause people to not want to come to a positive place and not get the indignation, the outrage, the anger, the self righteousness, whatever. I really did worry that this would be a stumbling block.
Mm,
And I'm glad you brought it up. I have been pleasantly surprised that people were seemingly waiting for it. They were seemingly just kind of biding their time on those other apps until something came along that could bring a little relief to all that emotion. So, in some ways, I want to say our timing was perfect. Like, we waited till everybody was exhausted by
mm,
social media algorithms that are overly engineered, that are meant to outrage us. Like, we came along and people just said, we can go someplace else now. And maybe that doesn't even mean they never revisit TikTok or whatever, but maybe they give themselves a break. You know, maybe they start their morning with this, feel good.
mm.
But I am curious. Like you mentioned, the billionaires backed by billionaires. If we get traction, will any of them then change their minds and retool the algorithm that they're using? Maybe make it more positive, more about community? We'll wait and see.
Well, it's a worthy fight to bring your slingshot and a few smooth stones too. And so I'm pulling for you
Yeah.
because if you lose, so do we.
Mm.
And I don't think people recognize as they enjoy their little doom scrolling and as they vote for their little candidate who is
Yeah.
spewing evil and hatred across the aisle at fellow human beings. Again, I'm apolitical on this stuff.
Yeah.
It is allowing the cancer to grow in the room unchecked. And
Mhm.
unchecked cancer spreads and eventually kills. And that's what's happening right now. And there's no surgeon or adult in the house. So I appreciate you guys at least recognizing there's got to be a different solution. There's got to be a way to move forward that's not as
Mhm.
profit centric or as doom centric as what is currently out there. What some stories you're hearing from folks who are checking out your work?
So we had just a person join a week ago, and she reached out to us and wrote us a nice message saying, not just that she enjoyed checking in every morning with Blessn and getting the positive vibes and the faith driven messages, but she loved that it was so community oriented because people give a lot of feedback underneath posts. You can actually record a video feedback below a post saying what you think about it. So I was caught off guard by how much people enjoy the community aspect of it. Even I had a friend who's not a Christian jump in and start posting some stuff. And they laughed with me. They're like, Kevin, you got me. I felt like I was part of something when I was on there. And I was like, I keep on coming back. So I think that community aspect has been really surprising. And maybe that is enough to bring people in, even though they're not getting the negative dopamine. Maybe they're getting the same thing that they get Sunday morning when they check in with their friends at church.
You started this journey years ago. You animated and turned the machine on more recently. How many active users do you currently have?
Oh, wow. We've had tens of thousands of downloads. Now, my retention numbers, I don't know. Like, we are still building out our portal to track how this process works. We kind of jumped in pure hearted, not trying to
Right.
figure out numbers and all that jazz. So now we're like, okay, let's figure out how many people do stick around because it's actually relatively easy to convince people at large to download the app and sign up. So maybe we could check in again when I find out like what percentage of those folks are sticking around for like a month or whatever.
For sure. Well, I hope both numbers continue to grow, both the downloads of the app, but also the retention and the time spent in faith, in solitude, in community,
Yeah.
focusing on the beauty.
Yeah. Thank you. In
Last
a
year in
couple of
the
weeks,
US, 94.5% of news stories were negative. And I
is
think
that
social
right?
media might be more than that. So for you to be fighting darkness with light and doing so in a pure-hearted, your term, pure-hearted way, like why not? So if someone's listening to our conversation right now and they're just feeling overwhelmed, stressed, they're beat down by life, what would be some encouragement for them?
Yeah. I would say everything that I've read points to community being the one thing that brings us happiness and longevity. So if you're not plugged into a church, you definitely should be just so you can have people by your side as you go through your faith journey. And I say in the morning, rather than doom scroll, join the Blessing community and be uplifted first thing.
So Kevin Clark, founder of Blessn, we have 7 questions that tether all of our guests together. They're called the Live Inspired 7. So buckle up. I think you're
All right.
capable of answering these questions, my friend. The first one is, what's been the most impactful book you've ever read?
I used to be an avid reader. I'm going to have to go with fiction because my attention span has always been short. So fiction narratives kind of keep me glued in. There's a book called Replay, and it's literally about a guy who replays his life. He has a heart attack at 43, wakes up in college freshman year in his dorm over and over and over. So he gets to kind of redo his life. And of course, round one, he goes for the lottery ticket because he knows the numbers and he bets on the games because he knows who wins. and then dies and does round two. And once again, it kind of rides on what I just said. The thing that he learns over all these lifetimes of replays, and we never find out why it's happening, by the way, is that it's really about the
Mm.
people around you. I think every young man in the world should read something like that so they could put it out of their heads that money and status is going to bring you something important to make you feel good. It's not gonna. As they say, it's lonely at the top.
What is one positive characteristic that you possessed as a little boy growing up in Oklahoma, but you wish you exhibited this trait as brilliantly today in California? So, what's one of your favorite characteristics you had as a kid climbing trees that you
Yeah.
wish you modeled a little bit more as a man?
I think really it's childhood curiosity. I think you used the example of climbing a tree. I think we stopped being excited about life, you know,
Mm.
the new experiences, meeting the new people.
If your home caught fire, and in California, you never know, man. So, if your home caught fire and all living things are out, and you have an opportunity of running back in and grabbing one item, what's that one physical thing you'd come racing back out of your house with?
Well, everything's digital, so photographs I can always find again. That's a good question because the answer used to be your photo albums, but now we all have it on our phones. I guess my phone, so I can get those pictures again.
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous Southern California day and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who would you like to be seated next to?
All right, this is a toss up, and maybe this is cheating. I'd say Peter or Paul to hear about the beginning of the church. I think that would be a heck of an interesting conversation. And I could have gone with Jesus, but I made myself not.
I appreciate that. I think you went pretty bold though with Peter and Paul on the left and right of the
Now
partnership.
that would be even better setup. One here, one there. I would love to hear the disagreements.
Sometimes for the folks who don't really read between the words, it seems almost passive, those two guys.
Hmm.
It would have been loud. It would have been intense. It would have been awesome. It'd be cool to have a conversation with either or both.
I doubt
What's
those two guys were very passive. Yeah, I think.
right? I mean, come on,
Yeah.
man. Warriors. So, what's the best advice Peter, Paul, or anyone else ever gave you? So, the best advice you've ever received is,
Oh, that's easy. My dad, when I was 16 or 17, I don't know why, but he turned to me and he said, "You think you've got infinite time. You don't."
hmm,
And he passed away within a decade of him saying that to me. So I like to remind myself often, even when I'm upset, whatever, of what he said.
this answer might be similar to the one you just gave, but it's a question I've got to ask. If you could go back in time, have a replay, and whisper some wisdom to yourself at age 20, what wisdom would you offer him?
Oh, that's easy. I would say don't take this so seriously. Like, enjoy the people. I would also circle back to what we said earlier. You think that there is a big prize waiting for you, status or money. Those are not prizes. Ignore those.
Awesome. Kevin Clark, founder of Blessn. It has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like your one sentence to read?
I would like it to say he had a lot of good times with a lot of good people. It's all community, I think.
Kevin Clark had a lot of good times with a lot of good people. He understood throughout his life and in his death that it's all about community, and he built a business and a platform so that you might do likewise. Kevin, we appreciate you showing up to the fight, man. We appreciate you doing the good work and trying to share good news in a world desperately longing for it. And please pass along our love not only to your mother, but also to Gerald Jones, who's working alongside of you each day.
I appreciate it. I will. Thank you so much for having me.
Final question is, where can we learn more about Blessn?
That's easy. You can go to your app store. If you're Apple, it's the iOS store. If you're Android, it's the Play Store. Download the app and take a look.
Well, my friends, we appreciate you taking a look. We appreciate you tuning in to this version of the Live Inspired podcast. So for this time, and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. That's Kevin Clark. And today is your day. What a blessing. Live with your soul on fire. My friends, one of my biggest takeaways from the conversation with Kevin today is that what we feed grows. I think we know that, but I think sometimes we forget that what we feed, whatever that thing is in your life, what we focus on expands. If we constantly consume fear and outrage and negativity, it's no surprise that those things begin to shape how we see the world. And when we intentionally seek out hope and encouragement and meaningful connections, we create space for something better to grow in our lives. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I think you would love the conversation I had a couple years ago with my friend. He's awesome. His name is Carlos Whitaker. After realizing how much technology had shaped his life negatively, Carlos embarked in a remarkable experiment, spending time away from screens, even away from his family, immersing himself in communities that live very differently from most of us. What he discovered about connection and presence and being fully engaged with people around him is both challenging and inspiring. I've been doing this a long time, but I got to tell you, I absolutely love the idea and the life of Carlos Whitaker. You will love this episode. Check it out at episode 762, or you can do it the old-fashioned way. Cruise over to the website right now, johnolearyinspires.com/podcast. And in today's show notes, I'll have a link guiding you into the Carlos Whitaker episode. Family and friends, I want to thank you for partying with me on this day. I want to thank you for tuning in to the John O'Leary Live Inspired podcast. And I want to remind you that what you focus on grows. Thank you for choosing something life-affirming today. So for this time and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. Today is your day. What a gift. Live with your soul on fire.
Keeley Companies was started almost 50 years ago by the one and only Larry Keeley. What started as a small family-owned paving company in St. Louis has grown to a nationally known full-service construction, development, and restoration partner. Larry the Legend, as he is affectionately known, has been a part of this growth every step of the way and continues to provide guidance as his son Rusty, my buddy, drives their vision and achieves results on purpose. His unwavering foundation of a family culture with a focus on people has gotten Keeley Companies to where they are today, and their journey is truly just beginning. To learn more about Larry the Legend and Keeley Companies, check them out at KeeleyCompanies.com.